So now let's get into how to train for strength in the weight room, which I'm pretty sure is what everyone really cares about anyways. So first we'll talk about loading parameters in the weight room. So as discussed, you need to go heavy to train strength. If you're never lifting heavy, you won't get that strength stimulus. So at some point you need to load up some heavy as weight and continuously add weight. So strength is really simple and easy to develop. I don't really think it's a complicated thing. It's honestly just go heavy and add weight. So the main gist behind getting stronger is progressive overload. So just constantly adding weight so often to continuously get strong. If you want to get stronger, find a weight that challenges you for a set number of reps, then stick with that rep range and add weight every week. It's honestly really that simple. 5 pounds added every week to your lifts to the same rep range is 260 pounds stronger in a year. So it just takes consistency and tracking. Now, it's never going to be that perfect and linear, but it's honestly really that simple. If you're a very young athlete or you need to establish a base, you should honestly just stick to that. There's really no need to work on percentages early on. You just need to keep it simple and progressively overload. Now, if you're a stronger athlete and you want to start using percentages to track bar speed and train other qualities based on your 1 rep max, you can use percentages. Now, with strength, true strength development happens between 80 and 92% and then beyond of your 1 rep max. Working between 80 and 92% is going to provide you a stimulus to develop strength and allow you to move loads for enough reps to recruit and fatigue a lot of motor units. Going above 92% will still develop strength. You just need to ensure that you're getting enough volume to actually get a stimulus from it. Now, besides that 80 to 92% range, you can also develop strength from ranges of 65 to 78% of your max as well if you move the bar with intent. So force is just a mass times acceleration. And to express force, which as we talked about is what strength is, either mass or acceleration or both needs to be very high. So if you're moving moderately light loads really fast, trying to move the bar as fast as possible, you can see an increase in force output from these loads and still develop strength from that. You just need to put the intent behind it. So if you're working percentages, you have these percentages to work within. If you're working in that 65 to 78% of your 1 rep max, you can bias higher acceleration with less load and still produce lots of force to get that stimulus if the intent bar speed's there. So don't just move weight lazily if the weight feels light. Move the bar with max intent and move the bar as fast as possible. Now, if you're working with loads above 82% of your 1 rep max, you'll still be moving more mass with less acceleration, but still get that stimulus from the heavy loads and straining against them. So we talked about the loading parameters. Now let's talk about how much volume and total reps and sets you should be doing in a strength workout when you're training strength, so we're not undertraining or overtraining. The sweet spot of total volume in a workout is going to be from 6 to 26 total reps of strength development work. Now, the higher the strength level in an athlete, the less reps you need to get that stimulus and vice versa. So if I'm a 700-pound squatter, I can probably be fine with just getting 6 total reps of strength reps in a workout and be totally fine to continuously develop strength because I have a lot of output. But if you're an athlete who isn't as strong or established, you don't really have a high training age, and you're really not that strong, you may need to work in that upper range of this to get that stimulus because you don't yet have the high output yet. So if you're a young high school athlete who's not as strong yet, you might want to work in that 15 to 26 range to get enough total volume to get an actual strength stimulus. Now, total strength volume fluctuates based on where you are in the year. So take that into account when you're programming strength, because you can probably take on more strength volume in the off season, but you may want to stay in that lower volume zone in season to not accumulate as much fatigue. So the total volume that you do also depends on where you are in season. So it's going to have 2 factors, training age and where you are relative to the season. A little bit later, we'll dive into how to plan the volume over the course of time. Now, the weight you do will be dependent on the total volume and vice versa. If you want to work heavyweight in the 85+% range, you may want to stick to lower volumes like 6 to 14 total reps. And if you want to work moderately heavy loads in that 70 to 82% range, you may hit more total reps like that 16 to 26 range of total volume. Now, you can further break this down into total reps per set. So the sweet spot for true strength development is going to be 1 to 6 reps per set. So you're pushing enough weight in these lower rep ranges to get that strength stimulus. Now, you can split the total volume into as many sets and reps as you need, depending on what fits best for your time, the setting, and taking any other factor into play. So let's say you're in the off season and you want to tack on more volume. If you have 25 reps to work with and you're working with percentages, you can split your reps and sets to a bunch of different ways. You can do a 5x5 working all sets in that 70 to 80% range, and that'll get you to 25 total reps. You get that fatigue, you get that stimulus. And you can also do pyramid drop sets with a set of 5, 4, 4, 3, 4, and 5, working all those sets in that 70 to 82% range, and that'll also get you to 25 total reps. So you can toy around with the reps and sets to see what fits best for you, what works best for you, as long as you're getting to that number you have planned and you're working within the percentages and reps per strength development. If you don't want to work with percentages, which you really don't have to when you're training strength, especially if you utilize field sets, you can just prescribe the reps to fit the relative intensities that you want to hit, referring to the relative intensity chart to ensure that you're getting a strength stimulus. So if you're training against a heavy weight for a set of 5, you're probably working between that 78 and 85% of your max, and you're getting stronger. If you're training against a weight for a set of 3, you're probably working close to 85 to 92% of your max. So even without using percentages, if you're training against a heavy weight for like 1 to 6 reps, it's challenging. You're working in that strength development intensity. Then from there, just add weight to the same volume every week or every other week to ensure that you're getting stronger and progressively overloading. Now, to discuss rest, you're getting lots of output from lifting heavy or lifting moderately heavy weight really fast, both neurally at the nervous system and locally at the muscular level. So you need to get full rest between sets to ensure recovery so you can continuously move heavy weight. So resting 2 to 3 minutes between heavy sets allows for full recovery so you can be ready to go again and be fully recovered for the next set. So doing a heavy set, resting 2 to 3 minutes, then going again after that so you can be rested, re-energized, and then kill another set and then do it all over again. So now let's talk about training strength in the weight room. First, let's go over tempos and how to use them to build strength. So there's a reason to purposely lift slow or purposely lift fast. Now, when it comes to lifting slow, you can do so with either slow eccentric, so going down very slow, or with isometrics, so holding a position with no movement at all. With slow eccentrics, so going down slow, this builds foundational strength, the ability to maintain structural integrity under loads through tempo, and direct muscular tissue strength, but it doesn't build max strength through force expression, meaning you can't really lift really heavy weight or lift really fast on the way up as fast as you'd want to when you're utilizing slow eccentrics. Slower eccentrics are really fatiguing, so you won't get lots of output from slow eccentrics because you're essentially just fatiguing the muscles itself beforehand, and you're not utilizing the stretch reflexes you could. Now, that doesn't mean that slow eccentrics shouldn't be used. For young athletes, slow eccentrics can help build a foundation of tissue strength and capacity, as well as structural strength to maintain posture through load. So you can build strength using them if you're a very young athlete. Slow eccentrics are also good to use early in the off season to bias direct muscular tissue strength and capacity. So I think of working slow eccentrics as building the potential for strength and the foundation for it. But again, they're not a good strategy to use if you're just purely training for output. If you're training to lift the highest amount of weight possible, or if you're trying to lift the weight really fast, you should not utilize slow eccentrics. Now, with normal or even fast tempos, this will allow you to lift with the highest force output possible. So going down as fast as you can, maintaining control of the bar, and then lifting up as fast as possible, you can recruit these motor units and do so at a relatively fast rate. So this is the best strategy for output and force expression. If you're trying to lift as much weight as possible or lift the bar as fast as possible, ditch the tempos and just lift to develop strength. Now, another thing that's important to training strength in the weight room is exercise selection. So the exercises that you choose matter a lot. To develop the most strength as a whole, you want to be doing big compound lifts. Big lifts that require multiple joints to move, the core to create stiffness, and the body working collectively will allow for the most strength output and force expression and will develop strength the best. Movements like your squats, your cleans, your bench presses, when done with max effort, are always going to provide a greater strength stimulus than movements like a curl, a tricep extension, a face pull, and things like that. So the majority of your strength movements should be done with compound movements. Now, that's not to say that small isolation lifts aren't important, because they are. They just won't allow for the most force expression like a big compound lift will. You can still use them, though, to develop muscular tissue strength and strengthen positions that you couldn't get from a compound lift. So if you want to train the biceps in a lengthened position, it'd be really hard to do so with the chin up, but you can retract the shoulder blades, lay on an incline bench, and then do dumbbell curls and strengthen the position of your biceps from a really lengthened position that you otherwise really couldn't get from a big lift. But overall in all, though, if you want to train strength as a whole, choose lifts that allow for the highest amount of force expression and strength possible. Now, another factor to take into account when picking exercises is the instability within a movement. So the more instability in a movement, the more muscular stress on that movement, but the less force expressed in it. So if I'm comparing a squat to a reverse lunge, I may get more muscular stress from that reverse lunge, but because there's more stability in the squat movement, I'll be able to load it a lot heavier and move it faster with more force and more power. So keep that in mind when training for force expression and bar speed. So now let's talk about the different modalities to train strength. Obviously, the weight room's first. It's the biggest and most common way to build strength. So pick a few high output movements, hammer those movements, and progressively overload, and then add variability as you go. So lifting is really for general adaptations of strength to improve your ability to recruit motor units, express force, and have a foundation. But as mentioned, it's not everything. Especially the stronger you get, you kind of want to get away from that and start developing strength in other ways. Now, the other ways that there is there's a lot of things you could do on the field, such as heavy marches, sprints, jumps, change of direction, and any other movement where you're expressing force from any position. The stronger you get in the weight room, as mentioned, the more you want to gear your strength work towards more specific means that apply better to your sport. So strength has to be seen beyond the barbell itself. We understand that the barbell is important, but if barbell strength was all that mattered, then as we mentioned at the first slide, powerlifters would be the best football players and basketball athletes, and that's just not the case. Developing strength through a barbell is just really general, but to the field of play, it becomes a lot more specific, and you need to do both to express force in a million different ways because sports are so variable. Then once you reach a really good foundation of strength and you're very strong, you can take volume away from strength and start putting it to other qualities such as speed strength, speed, your elastic ability, skill, power, and whatever it is that you need to improve as an athlete the most. So now let's dive into planning strength from a long-term perspective. We talked about strength sessions and the intricacies of strength, but now let's look at a broader picture of how to train for strength. So we know first the most important part to developing strength is progressive overload, but there's a bunch of different ways to do that. Now we're going to talk about some very simple ways and the ways that I use honestly for everyone that I train, because strength is just really that simple. It's not a very complex quality. It's just lifting heavy weight, keep adding weight, really meathead ways, or just lift moderately weight fast and, express force. So it's really simple. So the first way is to use a linear progression. Now, this is just the simplest way to train strength, and it just flat out works. It's just adding to some variable every week. So you can add weight every week and keep doing that until you can't anymore, or you can add a rep to the same weight every week up to a certain rep range, then drop down and then continuously do so. This way, you're ensuring progression of total weight lifted, and you continuously progressively overload and get stronger. Now, linear progressive overload works best for an athlete who has a very low training gauge and is really young. So if you just started training and you don't know what to do, pick a lift and just keep adding 5 pounds a week until you can't do so anymore. So looking over at our examples, we have 2 examples that are shown. We have add 5 pounds or add 1 rep, the ones we talked about. So just to see it, week 1, 105 for 5, 105 pounds for 5 reps. Week 2, just add 5 pounds, 110 for 5. Then week 3, add another 5 pounds, 115 for 5, and you continuously do so until you can't do any more. Or the other way, adding a rep, is very simple. Same thing. You just keep the weight the same and you add a rep to it. So 105 for 5 is what you start out with. Then next week, you do 105 for 6. Then week 3, you do 105 for 7. Then week 4, you can do 105 for 8. And in the next block, you go right back down and you do 115 for 5. And you do the same thing. Just add a rep every week. You're continuously getting stronger, pushing more total weight. Just a very simple way to train strength. So the second way to get stronger long-term, and it's a way that I use for myself and all the athletes that I train that have a really established strength foundation and are usually higher level athletes, is to do undulating wave loading with linear principles. So that's just alternating weeks of higher volumes and then higher intensities, but adding to those weeks every other week. So week 1, you may be working sets of 5, so more volume, but less intensity. And week 2, you may be working sets of 3, so less volume, but more intensity. And you continuously undulate volume and intensity and alternate the rep ranges weekly, adding 5 pounds every other week to the same rep ranges. So for example, week 1, you do 100 pounds for 5 reps. That's going to be your high volume week. Then week 2, you do 120 pounds for 3 reps. That's going to be your low volume week, but high intensity. Then week 3, you go back to 5 reps and you just add 5 pounds to that. So you get to 105 pounds. In week 4, you go back to 3 reps. So you add 5 pounds to that. You go to 125 pounds. So you're just undulating up and down higher volume weeks and higher intensity weeks. This allows a built-in recovery system, so you're not just increasing total volume load done every week, but actually every other week. And you establish a new baseline of strength and capacity every other week. Now, this works well with, as mentioned, athletes who have a strong foundation of strength and output and want to preserve themselves and stay fresh while getting stronger. So now let's talk about ways to plan your strength training if you're using percentages. And the last slide, we talked about planning for strength training without the use of percentages, but if you want to start tapping into more speed-based qualities or really start tracking bar speed based off relative intensity, so training strength, speed, power, speed, strength, speed, you're going to want to use percentages to get those relative intensities. Now, with bias, I believe undulating wave loading is the best way to continuously train as an athlete because it allows for concurrent training of all qualities, and it also has that built-in deload as mentioned to keep yourself fresh as an athlete. So simply undulating intensity and volume continuously on a week-to-week basis. So let's look at 2 examples of undulating wave loading, with one example being in season and one being off season. In season, if we're looking just at 1 day a week devoted to strength, we can undulate week to week in a block with weeks 1 and 3 being weeks that we train higher total training volume, touching on strength, speed, and power-based qualities. So moving moderately heavy weight pretty fast, biasing more acceleration to express force. Then weeks 2 and 4 being weeks that we train lower training volume, but touching on true strength development and biasing more load to express force. So the qualities we're rotating are strength, power, and strength speed to stay fresh in season and still continuously build strength. Now in the off season, we could do the same thing, just changing up the qualities we're training for. So we could undulate week to week in a block, with weeks 1 and 3 being fatiguing weeks with higher volume training strength capacity or more muscular strength, utilizing tempos. And then weeks 2 and 4 are going to be the higher output weeks with the lower total training volume, where we're training true force expression with higher loads. So now let's look at how this will look in a training week. We've been talking about one singular day of training, which is that strength day, but training could have 3 to 4 days a week of training. So if you're training full body splits, touch on strength one day out of the week and use the other days to train other qualities. So we can use the off-season template from the last slide to see how that would look, covering every training day of the week. So week 1, we're getting more training volume. Our strength day is the strength capacity day, getting more reps of moderately heavy weight, working through tempos. Then day 2 is movement and stability. Day 3 is an output power day. And we finish day 4 being a heavy hypertrophy day. So really concurrent, working all qualities. All in all, that week has a higher volume and it has less load. Then we go to week 2, and our strength day is a true strength development day, working low reps with very heavy weight. Then day 2 is movement, day 3 speed and power, and then day 4 is again hypertrophy. So all in all, this week had less volume, but it had more weight. And we touch on strength one day this week, and then we repeat it in the next cycle. So up and down, undulating intensity and volume. Now, for training upper body, lower body splits, we can devote 1 to 2 days a week to training strength. So one strength day for each, lower and upper, and 1 day for training another quality of your choice. If you train concurrently year round, so training all qualities, you can split it as you would full body lifts in an undulating fashion. So weeks 1 and 3, we have a little higher volume and less intensity. And weeks 2 and 4, we have less volume, but you touch on that true strength development zones and up the intensity and get both upper and lower body strength day in the week. And you can get the same workload from both splits. The only difference is the frequency and the dispersion of volume. So you may get more condensed fatigue from an upper lower split than you would from a full body split. But again, you do what works best for you, your setting, and your situation.